Who said that?
Father Brennan visits Father Harris and questions him about his suspicions regarding a conspiracy, an arrangement for the birth of an Antichrist, taking place within the church. Harris gives Brennan a photograph of a baby with the name Sienna inscribed on it and tells him it's the only proof he has of what they've done. When Brennan presses for more information, Harris stands up and leaves. Brennan meets him outside, but Harris is killed when a falling pipe splits his head open. In another scene, American novitiate Margaret Dano arrives in Rome amidst left-wing protests. She is welcomed by Father Gabriel, who takes her to the car where she meets Cardinal Lawrence, and they all drive to the Vizardelli orphanage. Upon arrival, Cardinal Lawrence introduces her to Abbess Sister Silva, whom he says will take good care of her. Sister Silva gives her a tour of the orphanage, after which Margaret is taken to her quarters. There, she meets her roommate, Luz, a fellow novitiate. They talk for some time, getting to know each other and sharing their experiences. Luz later invites Margaret to a disco. Margaret is hesitant at first, but Luz convinces her of the need to explore and have fun, to which she succumbs. At the disco, Margaret meets a man named Paolo. She shows interest in having a sip of his drink. Later, Paolo invites her to dance, and during the dance, she blacks out. She wakes up the next day in their room with no memory of what happened after the dance. At the orphanage, Margaret takes an interest in an orphan named Carlita, who is being maltreated because of her strange behaviors. Margaret bonds with her, having experienced similar troubling visions in the past. In another scene, Father Brennan meets Margaret when she is alone. He introduces himself and warns her about Carlita, mentioning that bad things will begin happening around her. In disbelief, Margaret starts to leave, but Father Brennan pleads with her to stay. He asks her to come see him later that night so he can explain everything she needs to know. When Margaret returns to the orphanage, she sees Carlita showing Angelica a drawing of a pregnant woman being restrained. Margaret disapproves of the drawing, contrary to Angelica's approval. This made Angelica leave abruptly. Moments later, something bad happens. Just as predicted by Father Brennan. Sorry to interrupt, please subscribe to our channel. It's a small click for you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. The events of that day prompt Margaret to visit Brennan. Brennan tells her that a group of people within the church are desperate to stop the rise of secularism. As a result, they seek to bring about the birth of the Antichrist to create fear and drive people back to the church, with Carlita intended to be his mother. He implores Margaret to obtain Carlita's file for him to study the circumstances surrounding her birth, in order to find a way to prevent the birth of the Antichrist. This news unsettles Margaret, and she hurriedly takes her leave. When she arrives at the orphanage the next day, she observes Carlita closely and asks her a few questions. During this process, Carlita becomes emotional and leaves. Margaret immediately follows her, apologizing. She notices something strange. Just then, she's informed that a riot has broken out and everyone has to leave. When they get outside, after some time, Margaret experiences demonic hallucinations. After that, Sister Silva invites her to her office and informs her that her vows have been postponed. Sister Silva also orders Margaret to stay away from Carlita, as it appears her illness is beginning to affect her. Margaret leaves angrily. While inside the car heading home, she spots Paolo and asks the driver to stop. Margaret calls out to him and tries to reach out, but he looks at her and ignores her. He warns her to stay away from him but later tells her to look for the mark. Immediately after, a truck collides with him, crashing him into a wall. The next day during Luz's vow-taking ceremony, Margaret seizes the opportunity to sneak into Sister Silva's office. She discovers a hidden underground chamber and a drawer filled with numerous files labeled Sienna. Upon glancing through them, she finds that all the other files contain photos of disfigured babies with a birthmark in the shape of 3 sixes, except Carlita's file. She takes Carlita's file and a few others and heads out. At some point, she sees Carlita and takes her into a room, lifts the foam, and hides the files. Just then, some sisters and Father Gabriel enter, and a struggle ensues. During the struggle, Margaret notices the mark on Carlita's pallet before she is captured. On her way out, she points Gabriel towards the direction of the files. Later, Gabriel frees Margaret and they both go to Brennan's house with the files. As they examine the files, they discover that Carlita wasn't the only baby who survived. The baby they're looking for has the mark on her scalp. As they continue examining the files, Margaret picks up a photo and takes a closer look at it. She remembers Paolo telling her to look for the mark, pointing towards the scalp. She also recalls being impregnated in a satanic ritual the night she blacked out at the disco. Brennan takes a look at her scalp and confirms the mark is there. Margaret requests to have the pregnancy aborted. On their way, another vehicle crashes into theirs. Margaret gets out of the car, and suddenly her stomach becomes visibly large. She wakes up to find herself strapped to a hospital bed. Cardinal Lawrence speaks with her for a while, giving her words of encouragement. Later, she gives birth to 2 children, a boy and a girl. Abandoning the girl, they happily take the boy and hail him as the Antichrist. While Lawrence unstraps Margaret, she pleads to have a feel of her child, and he is given to her. As Lawrence tries to commend her for a job well done, she stabs him. She feels the urge to stab the child too, but cannot bring herself to kill her own son. Just then, the child is taken from her and Luz stabs her. They leave with the boy and set the chamber on fire to conceal their evil deeds. Luckily, Carlita saves Margaret and her daughter. Please, like, comment and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in my next video.